Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 125b handheld blower. This one, the customer complaint is that it just does not want to run right. So as usual on all my repairs, one of the first things we're going to do is look in the fuel tank. In the case of a 125b, the actual first thing you're going to want to do is grab the air filter cover and try and wiggle it. If you can wiggle the cover back and forth, the whole gray filter box there, then your carburetor is loose from its intake mount. And what you'll find in this video for a carburetor replacement doesn't fully apply to tightening that mount. And I'll provide a link to a video that shows you exactly how to do that. The symptoms on a loose carburetor that needs to be tightened is just usually that it just bogs real bad. There's only 2 screws to fix that, but getting at them screws is a bit of a challenge. You got to take everything apart to get to them, and in that video I'll show you how to do that. So to replace the carburetor on this one, we're going to want to remove the starter assembly with 4 screws, and then we're going to want to remove the side cover. Don't mix those screws up. I think that the ones in the starter might be fine thread. Now what we find here, this little metal rod is static discharge rod. Usually they fall off of there, but this one stayed on. We got our throttle linkage off. We have our muffler guard off, because that's just going to fall and hit the ground if you don't take it off anyway. Now we're going to want to remove the air box. You're going to need an 8mm socket, and there's just 2 screws that hold that air box on. Once you have the nuts off of that air box, then that blue lever, which is the choke, needs to be all the way to the left there, where it can the air box can pull through. There's kind of a bigger hole there where the choke lever will fit through. We'll get our fuel lines off. In this case, we're going to save the fuel lines. If they're at all questionable, Husqvarna offers a kit that is the grommet, the fuel lines, the primer bulb, and the fuel filter, all assembled. You just got to push the grommet into the tank. I would recommend going that route if you need to replace fuel lines. So we got our lines off and our carb removed. Husky had an updated carburetor for these models, and that's why we're not rebuilding this carb, we're just replacing it. One thing about this video is that you might notice there's no cuts in the video. I think it's about a 9-minute video, and it's the full job start to finish. If you've never done it before, I mean, if you allot a half an hour and you run into a couple of stupid little problems, you should be fine. Alright, we're going to take the old gasket off, and then we're going to put a new gasket on. Comes with the carburetor. You're going to want to put the fuel line on the bottom of the carburetor. This is the line that goes to the fuel filter. Then we're going to put the gasket on, and then we're going to put the fuel line on that runs between the carburetor and the purge bulb. And the last line that comes off the purge bulb is running back to the tank as the return line. Air filter box goes back on, and our two 8mm sized nuts go back on. You don't need to crank these things down super tight. Just get them good and snug. Let's go! They're waiting on you.
That was bullshit.
This guy's dinking around, and I'm trying to show you the quickest way I can how to get this carburetor swapped. Put your throttle linkage back on the carburetor. On the new carburetor, it can only go one way. There's only one hole to put it in. Make sure that your stop switch is fitted in the slot with the clear plastic cover in place. Keep the moisture out. Now this muffler heat shield has got a couple of little, I don't know, catches there on the side. And they fit into the orange housing of the blower. They only fit in there one way, and once you got them to set where they belong, everything drops in place and it makes sense. Right there. Our engine side cover goes back on. You may have to wiggle the trigger or that cruise control lever, that throttle lock lever, to get everything to drop into place. If you remove you see I'm getting the clear plastic piece in place there. If you remove that static discharge wire, you want to make sure you got that back in place first too. The 3 coarse threaded screws go in the top here. And you're just going into plastic. I'm using a driver here, but it's got a clutch on it, and I set it at a pretty low setting. If you have the same snap-on driver, most of the screws that I run into plastic, I've got on a 3 setting. In fact, these that are going into the aluminum are also on a 3 setting. Then I finish torquing them to about 3/4 ugga-dugga by hand, just by turning the driver. So we got the body put back together. We'll slap our air filter back in and our air filter cover. Come on, put the cover on. I just told him you were putting the cover on, dude. Now you're dinking around with the gas can. Let's go. Well, you can see it primes up. I think that was the complaint that this guy had, is that it wouldn't prime. We'll get a light behind that primer. You can see that it's filling up now. Well, that's all I got for you on the 125b carburetor swap. Thanks for watching. Later.